Morning, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to council for, this is November the 26th. We'll call the meeting to order, motion to accept the agenda, moved by Bruckner, seconded by Gillies, with the addition of Marlene Van Ham wanting to make the presentation. Addition in here, is that a-
Sure.
Okay, any other additions to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. So now you officially can talk.
Wonderful.
Okay, any declarations of community interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we don't have any minutes?
Move the
So,
meeting next.
okay, so the first appointment is 9:05 and Stephanie's not here yet. So,
Probably detouring around that one.
okay, Marlene, do you want to come
Sure.
on up and,
Well, thank you, first of all, for allowing me, who was obviously not in the mode of getting prepared last week as I was on holidays, but anyway. So I just wanted to address council just with a really general concerns, I guess. I obviously sat in on the previous meeting and just, listening to some of the requests, and I did pick out a few ones particularly, but I think in general, what I'm trying to get across is that this is not a time for wish lists. I had an appointment to get my nails done yesterday, and I was speaking with my lovely lady, and whose husband just got laid off, and he worked in one of the car manufacturing places in Tiltonburg, and he was laid off again. They keep laying them off for 1 week at a time because there's just, the cars aren't moving and it's just trickling all the way back to them. Anyway, bottom line is he was instead not taking holidays because that way he can get paid for the time that he's supposed to be laid off. People are struggling, and I think that's something that, as council, you really got to remember this in the back of your head, to ensure if you were not in that position, as business owners, et cetera, but the working middle class is hurting. And so anything that, will increase the budget is something that I think you really have to look at it from their perspective, not necessarily from your own perspective. So with that in mind, I had a few things that I wanted to address. I guess the biggest one that really stood out to me listening last meeting was the parks and halls. They have, very large wish lists of, we'd like to have all this. Well, I want Christmas in July, also not going to happen. It would be perfect in July, I think, but there's a lot of these things that I think, are lovely, but the parking lot in Brownsville, given what I just said, there, in my opinion, should be an absolutely, I'm sorry, Brownsville is located along Cloven Road. It has a lovely street parking on both sides of the road. There's lots of parking. I don't think it's a necessary expense. The Mount Elgin Hall storage room, if I told my husband I wanted to add on to the house because I needed more storage, I think he would tell me to declutter. I'm not sure what's in the storage room, obviously not privy to that information. However, adding on for the sake of storage seems excessive. Again, in a time of where we are living today. The park in Mount Elgin at $150,000. Again, if we were living in glorious times and money was no object, I would consider it. As it is today, I would not personally. The Brownsville playground, that one I really struggle with because it goes in hand with a request for a camera system or an upgrade to the camera system because of the vandalism that we are experiencing in Brownsville. Brownsville is my community center. I attend Brownsville. It's close to my heart. My husband is obviously spends a lot of time over there. On one hand, you can't, it's like the child that says, Mom, can I have the new toy? But then my brother will destroy it 5 minutes from now. You're not going to give him the new toy. You're going to screw it out the brother first. So, based on that, I think that would be a no for me as well. The Southford Shack, as it was referred to, I don't know what the shack looks like. I would pretend in your own mind, this is my shack. It's sitting in my backyard. What would I do with it? What I can, the gist I was getting was it might not be worth fixing, and please don't. If it's not worth fixing, don't spend the money. That's just throwing bad money. It's not a good idea. The The one thing that also concerned me was this new position of a facilities technician. You all know, I think, how I feel about adding more township employees. I don't feel, I feel very strongly against adding people. And what I heard in the last budget meeting was exactly why I don't feel about, how I feel about adding employees. What I heard was that, the hall boards did not adjust their budget or did not take those item lines out of their budget when they're asking for grass cutting and maintenance because it's supposed to be done by the new person now. What I would like, if I was sitting in your seat, I would ask staff I would like proof in the pudding. I would like to see proof that adding this person actually makes financial sense. And if it does, that's great. If staff can show you on, let's say, last year's, items that, listen, these are the lines that, these are the lines that went away, grass cutting in Brownsville Hall, so removal in Mount Elgin, et cetera. Replacing a light bulb in fire hall in Brownsville, a squeaky door in the Mount Elgin fire hall, whatever it may be. And then compare that to the outlay that comes from the wages and benefits. And if the wages and benefits are equal or less then great. But I would like to see proof, don't be the same value. Don't just assume that somebody's going to be, that's going to work out at the end of the year. Because I'm really not convinced, especially when it hasn't trickled down to the people that are supposed to not be doing those things. For them to hear, listen, you can't have snow removal in your budget because it's not supposed to be done by us. So just ask for the information, ask for the proof to show that that was a good addition. The Sun Life up 14% is one that kind of irked me, like, wait, what? Anything that is 14%, I think is worthwhile looking into, whether it be a switch. I just switched insurance companies for my son. I can tell you he got his driver's license and his full license, and I called our insurance company, Big Trillium, who also insures everything else on our farm, and their first quote was $8,008. I just fell off my chair and started calling around. I asked my sons, check with your buddy. Ended up at a very local little company in Elmer for $37.50. That's what shopping around for insurance did for me. And so at a 14% increase, it might be time to ask that to do some shopping and say, you know what? No, because we know it almost feels like some of these companies felt that, I was raising the prices by 10-20% during COVID, so I'm just going to continue to do that, and everybody will just be okay with that. And I think it's fair to say, you know what, we're not okay with it. I'm not suggesting a cut in benefits to your employees or your staff. I'm saying, it might be worthwhile shopping around. I think that was all the things I had. Yeah, I think that was it. So I guess it's just a general census of, as you're making these decisions, pretend you're the working poor middle class, the working middle class, and they're getting squeezed. So that's all I have.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Maureen, and we've had this conversation before. One of the things that I appreciate most is when people actually come forward. Most people, and if you turn, just get Stephanie behind you for a minute, but if you turn around and look, the general public doesn't go up. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, council has a responsibility, but so does the electorate. And if you don't hold people's feet to the fire, and I'm not saying that I agree with everything you said here, but I'm just saying if the public doesn't, then part of the problem is theirs. Of course. They didn't do their job. And rather large increase at the county last year. But in all of Southwest Oxford, I got 2 phone calls. That's it. 7,600 people, and only 2 of them were upset enough to pick up the phone and call, and you were one of them. Right? And to me, I would say, one could say, I'm not saying this, but one could say, okay, so 2 people were upset and 7,500 people were perfectly happy. Too bad you're in the minority, you lose, right? But I don't believe that to be true either. And we have created a society where the public does not say, or is not in, sometimes they say it, but they say it in less than, productive ways.
Right.
That, this is what they want or don't want. So whether I agree with you or not, I really appreciate the fact that you can vote. That, their job. And, I would see a lot more of it, and not just on budget issues, on every issue, what we don't. So, anyway, any questions from council? Good morning. I would just, the one I was gonna mention that you asked about facilities technician. The problem we're having kind of two problems. One is, volunteers used to do all of the work that falls. And now we're getting to the point where, I was at the whole board meeting a couple of weeks ago, and, no, they weren't gonna do that, no, they weren't gonna do that, no, they weren't gonna do that, it's somebody else. And then when they found out that they had to actually pay for somebody else, well, they were questioning why they were paying for it. Well, because, you're responsible for the whole and you have a budget for it, so, but it's across the board, we have two problems. We don't have the volunteers to, because everybody's busy, I respect that, but we don't have volunteers. And then we have the other concern that as a society we've created as well, and that people are a little bit afraid to do something for fear they get sued for it. Right? Someday, I'll go straight to the driveway, or I'll go straight to the sidewalk, and I don't do it quite well enough, and somebody falls and gets hurt, they're afraid they're gonna get sued. And as a society, I would say, kind of leaning towards that end of things. We've actually created that problem ourselves. People are afraid to volunteer for fear something goes wrong and I'm going to get nailed for it. And we used to let kids cut the lawns at all the park. And that stopped because we're going to get sued as soon as some kid gets hurt. And to the point now where, you have to have kind of an either fully our own person that we've trained and all that sort of stuff, or somebody has to be fully insured and all that to even come on the property with a lawnmower. That's changed just in my lifetime. And I'm not saying it's changed for the better, but quite frankly, I didn't think it was in the matter of telling my kids to go and cut the lawn at the church or cut the lawn at the bowl. Get your butt down there and do something. Anyway, appreciate your comments. Anything else? Oh, Councilor Pickard, you wanted to say anything down there?
Yeah, Mary Ellen, when are we going to the market for insurance?
Okay, so we're talking benefits insurance or our,
Our liability.
Okay.
Fire.
so, we didn't budget for it in 2025, but we can budget for it in 2026. It's about $5,000 to $8,000 to do the RFP because staff, we don't know, I'm not about the intricacies of insurance. You have to have someone who has that ability to go through and check it. So there has been a few local municipalities who have changed. They've moved from Intact, which used to be Cowan, to other companies. I think there's two of them that went, I can't remember the name of the company that they're looking at. But it's not in the budget for this year. It could tentatively be if that's a decision of council. But we don't have a policy or a procedure where we go to market every 5 years. So that's certainly something we could look at.
Just a comment, it's interesting, the last time we went to the market, we had a significant reduction in premium.
Yes, we did.
But now, over the last 3 years, it's slowly come up. Gains we had at one time are now gone.
Correct.
So the insurance is in what they call a hard market at the time. They thought it was going to be over in 2024. It doesn't seem to be. And it's probably not a good idea to go in a hard market for granted because people are hungry. So I'm not sure whether the market softening in insurance for 2025, but it would probably be worthwhile and sometime in the near future to blow it again. But anyways, Councilor Yetman, you were next.
I think Mary Ellen had comments she wanted to make.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so what was the percentage for the liability? Was it 8%? It's in the budget? 7%. The market is softer, but then you have to look at claims. So there's two right now, that we're working on, that can potentially impact our current insurer as well as future insurers. So certainly it is something, but just for information purposes, so councils.
Councilor,
I just wanted to piggyback on your comments. I wanted to thank Marlene for taking the time, and taking the interest to show up. It's criticism, to be sure, and I always get a little bit uncomfortable when I see you sitting in the chair. Because I know you come at it with a very high degree of intelligence and an analytical mind, and I really appreciate your feedback, and I appreciate the time that you put into this. And it's criticism, but it's constructive criticism, and that's so different from what we see on social media a lot of the time, right? So I really appreciate the effort you put into it.
okay, thanks very much, Marlene,
Thank
and Stephanie, your turn. The Beechville Museum, budget presentation, so.
So I think in past years when I've done this, I haven't provided quite as many notes, but I hope that the notes that were attached kind of gave some context to this budget, how it compares to our budgets over the last few years, and how it ties into how the museum is growing. I really do think that if you're looking at many of our explanations for our revenue streams, our changes in expenses, a lot of that is reflecting that growth that we've seen for programs like our car shows, the addition of things like PA day camps, the addition of the retention and like a full realization of 2 full-time staff members. In addition, it reflects a lot of the upcoming capital projects that we still have for the ISIP grant, so the work on the barn, and also shows a bit more interest in engaging our volunteers. I know it just came up in the past presentation about how volunteers are so central to our facilities and our institutions in the township, and we've seen our volunteer base grow quite a bit over the last few years after the pandemic. And it's upon us to make sure that we're engaging those volunteers, recognizing those volunteers, and making sure that when they're on site, they're able to do the projects that they signed up to do. So obviously the museum relies on a number of different streams of grants. So those are under your revenue lines: Young Canada Works, Canada Summer Job, the Canadian Museum Operating Grant. We do consult our program advisors for these grants to help us create this budget, and there's a lot shifting, but there's also very little information that they provide us in terms of what they're gonna receive for 2025. So it's a bit of a guessing game, but we know that minimum wage is going up, and that will impact our Young Canada Works employees. Canada Summer Jobs over the last few years had reduced funding or increased applicants is what we've been told. And so we don't foresee that those grant lines will expand. So unfortunately, even though our programs are expanding, our staff is expanding, our revenue streams are expanding, some of those grant offerings are not expanding. And that's in consultation with representatives from the ministry that we've heard, not to anticipate additional funds necessarily there. We also have included some changes from our contractors. So we were given a notification of increase in cost for our pest control company, so that's been included into this budget as well. Many of the lines that were reduced, especially in relation to our administrative expenses and our maintenance and repair, those reductions are typically just based on year-to-date over the last few years. So we look at what we spent for the last few years, and if it hasn't reached our budgeted amount for 2024, then those were reduced in 2025. When we look at the township expenses split between SWACs and Zora, those are on the very last page of the initial budget before the notes. And the increase there predominantly, if you're looking at the curatorial line versus the other line, the major increase there is in the curatorial line. For those of you who are aware, I was on leave last year, which influenced kind of what the curatorial line looks like, because the pay rate for myself and for my replacement were different from the pay rate for Sydney, who's now an assistant curator role, and her replacement were different. And so the amount that were held in 2023 actually continued into 2024 because of that leave. But now in 2025, everybody's back on deck. So it definitely influences the 2025 budget for payroll and wages. I don't want to read through the notes in case everybody, I'm sure everybody already has kind of done that, so I would just open it up if there's any questions and, many of you have through our quarterly report kind of heard of all of the different, rounds and events that we've had through the year, so, if there's any questions about how the budget relates to those, then I am more than happy to, respond.
Before we do that, don't forget what, information are there, any comments you want to make on behalf of the board?
Thank you. I think, the board's been very pleased, with stuff that's happened at the museum this past year, and continues to happen. Obviously, through the reports, everybody's heard about everything happening. The car shows have been a big draw, to the area in the museum. The museum has been, busy always trying to engage the grounds and engage with other people, there, whether it be, car shows or lighting of the lights or, even other events as our camp days or, the new thing that's been going on, these PA day camps has been really helpful, for families looking for, somewhere for their kids to go on the PA days. I think the museum, working along with, and I said it when the Legion group was here, that, the group of us in the area have really been working well together. Coming together, working on events, and I feel that's what community is all about. I think we've tied that in very well. There's a lot of big projects working with this ISIP grant, continuing to work on Barn 1. I think that's our biggest project moving forward here in the next couple of years to satisfy the conditions of the grant that we received for it. So I think that's our big project we're working towards. But other than that, been very, very happy with things that have been going on at the museum.
Thanks very much. Questions from council?
I just wanted to make one comment from what Craig had said too, is, if you're looking at specific lines, like in our revenue lines, we have a programs and outreach line that in 2024 was budgeted at $250. That is what we have budgeted for our PA day camps. So if you're running 6 or 7 PA day camps in the year for $250, you're seeing that line goes up because we're trying to expand how many we're trying to offer. So some of these lines were just outdated for what we're now currently offering. Another example of that would be programs and special events for our expenses. We had $500 budgeted in 2024. That line was covering 5 car shows, $500 to run 5 car shows. So because the car shows are growing, because the PA day camps are growing, those revenue lines are going from 750 up a little bit. But again, the expenses are aligning with, the PA day camps that bring in $27 per child. So it's expenses that is going to line up with the revenue line that's really good for the museum. And similarly, the car shows can bring upwards of $900 every show to the museum, right? So having $500 allocated for expenses, it's just not sustainable if we want to continue to see that for the institution. And so I think that our expenses are trying to align and very responsibly align with the revenue streams that we're trying to keep healthy, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. So, any other questions, Councillor Pickard?
Stephanie, do you keep any records as to what kind of traffic you get through the museum itself?
Yes, we do.
We got to think in terms of return on investment.
Absolutely.
So we're spending a lot of money on this project, so I'm interested in knowing how many people use the museum, not because there's a car show or a camp,
Right.
but how many people come in and look at the artifacts?
Absolutely. So we do keep very close track of our metrics. We do that all through Excel spreadsheets, and our staff is very diligent about reporting feet through the door that come in for museum tours, in contrast to, say, participants in our program. So we do divide people who come for the museum itself, people who come for donation inquiries to drop off artifacts, people who come to participate in a camp program, a school program. We divide all of those and report on all of those through our grants that we apply for the community museum operating grant. This year alone, we've had 4,100 people through the door for museum tours or using the museum itself. That doesn't include commercial participants. It doesn't include camp participants. It's independent of all of that. When we spoke at our last board meeting, Ron Ford, who was previously a counter in Broad, he said at the time in 2018, before I started, that they had reviewed the guest book that year, and there were 30 people who signed the guest book that year. So we're seeing substantial growth in terms of people signing the guest book. We're at 4,100 for the year 2020. It is, it really is. It is a big- But those metrics are so important for us to be able to show and highlight the value of the resource, right? And as I said, that's not including if you encompass all of the people who buy for the car shows. I mean, even this year alone, the number of people who came to the site to take photographs of their families with photographers, I mean, that's not something we reap revenue from, but it's a community use, right? And we have people all fall there taking photos of their families because the grounds are kept up so well and because they're utilized by the community. So it's small little things like that, that impact is something maybe not reflected in the budget, but something that we're very aware of as the board of directors and as the staff.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thanks very much, Devin.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. The next two appointments are until noon, so shall we go to discussion items? Do FP 16, that where we started?
We can talk about that all in part and parcel to the presentation for fire budget if you would like, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, do you want to do it that way? Let's start with the fire budget.
All right, here we go. All right, so the summary was provided by to council from Brooke, the treasurer there, and you can see there's a significant difference right off the bat in the line item between 2024 and 2025. And so the major part of that is firefighter wages, which accounts for about 95,000 of it. So there's a couple of factors that come into play here. If we look at our past history on the shortfall in firefighter wages over the last 3 years, I believe you were provided that spreadsheet where they, Brooks, provided that spreadsheet? No, okay. So in 2022, you were short 49,000. 2023, you were short 78,000. And this year projected anywhere between 30,000 and up, depending on our number of calls in the last quarter. In addition, Brownsville was running 4 firefighters short for the last year or two. And then in addition to that, there was 2 that weren't showing up. One was on leave and one just wasn't showing up. So you're short 6 firefighters in Brownsville, which factors into the overall budget calculation. So, and then previously this year, you council approved the training coordinator and the public fire safety educator honorariums, so positions. So what I've done was, and what I've had success with in the past was taking a 3-year average of firefighters, number of emergency hours, number of additional firefighting hours, 80% attendance on average at firefighter training events. What we need to look at for courses that firefighters need to take to progress through the ranks to different levels of firefighter classification. And we came up with the proposed numbers in the budget. Significant increase, yes, no doubt. We can't, I don't think you can continue to work in a deficit on firefighter wages moving forward. So next year, you're gonna have 6 new firefighters on the books, and they're gonna be taking, so that's $9,000 alone for the recruit training program. If you were to hire that out by a third party, you'd be looking at $8,000 per firefighter to get them certified to level 2 firefighter. We're doing it through our RIFSOC program for about $2,000. So that's a savings that's not actually realized in the budget. So I just kind of throw that in council for your consideration. To offset that, a lot of our calls this year were motor vehicle accidents. We do have a high revenue from MTO and non-residents. We took a very conservative approach to that in the revenue generation in our budget. Because if it flips next year where your motor vehicle collisions go down and you get a couple of large fires, barn fires, like large straw fires, hay fires. Now your firefighter wages are going up and you have no revenue coming in from that side. So we took a bit of a conservative approach from that end of it. So that's what accounts for the majority of the increases. And then Brooks done a very good job of explaining, like, your insurance is going up 7%, COLA 1.9% throughout the stations. And then your equipment purchases are going up about, looks like about $7,000. That comes from taxation versus out of reserves. like your bunker gear and your helmets and your boots and balaclavas and so on come out of taxation. And then the portable pumps and airbags and so on come out of reserves. So, yeah, I don't know where else to go to talk about, as far as significant changes. I don't want to read the whole summary. I'm sure council has looked at it already. So if you have any questions, and well, probably the best way to deal with it.
Okay, so, any questions? One for, work, we have to decide what our was for October.
2%.
It is 2%.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
If there's no questions, Mr. Mayor, I'll just continue the capital.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the vehicles. So if you look at page 3 or 63, I guess, is we get into vehicles. And what to do for replacement is the fire chief's car, utility pickup in Fire Hall 2, and projecting a tanker for replacement in 2026, which would need to be ordered in 2025 in order to get it in 2026. That's probably more of, okay, hopefully we can get it in 2026. I'm not sure if council is considering a canoe. Is that anywhere? Okay. So if canoe purchase, if you go to canoe purchasing, you could likely get it within 2026. If you do RFP, it'll probably take you to 2027 before you get the new vehicle. So my report to council on vehicles was laid out, and it just, here's my view. I'm just making a recommendation to council is, why do you need a fire chief's vehicle and why do you need a utility vehicle? I think you can get away with like a pickup truck for the fire chief. That way, if they get a fire call, which happens about 3 or 4 times a year, that they need to pick up hose, fire chief's vehicle could be available for that. If they need it, call the fire chief, hey, come out and help us pick up the hose, or if they can leave it at the fire station at night, they can use it at night when the fire chief's not using it. If it's during the day, the fire chief's most likely going to show up at the fire anyways, so stick around and help them clean up the hose and take it back to the fire hall. Also, it's not really conducive to the new cancer prevention recommendations from the Ministry of Labor for the fire chiefs to be carrying any equipment inside of the passenger compartment of the vehicle. So for example, last night I had to transport bunker gear from 2 stations to 1 station and to outfit the new recruits, and it's all in the back of my car, and there's potential contamination that we're providing throughout the whole vehicle. So with a pickup truck, I just throw it in the back. It's easier to clean and keep clean and avoid contamination. So I'm recommending the council to, go down to 1 vehicle, right? First, get the fire chief a pickup truck, it can be 2-wheel drive. Doesn't need to be 4-wheel drive, just a basic pickup truck, doesn't need to have all kinds of lights and bars on it. You could probably take the current light bar off of the utility vehicle at station 2 and put it on the new vehicle. And a box cover, a minimal decaling with just the fire department logo or the township logo on it. It says Fire Protective Services. And that would suit the fire service quite well in my mind. So that's part of the report. And then looking forward farther down the road, and the council doesn't need to make the decision on that today as far as the tankers go. There was some discussion that possibly, I was asked if they could go with the tandem axle tankers, more water. Well, my view is, no, you don't really need bigger tankers. You got 1,700 gallons in each tanker now. Your council just approved the new cistern in Mount Elgin for $100,000. Now we have a water supply within 6 kilometers of anywhere in the township. There's also mutual aid. And so if to activate mutual aid right away, we can have 3 or 4 tankers on scene in 20 minutes. So just for council's consideration moving forward, that decision doesn't have to be made today, because that's probably will be the next fire chief that will bring that report to council to move forward with the purchase of the tanker. So I'm just putting that in front of council so you can have the long-term outlook from a financial perspective of how your vehicles impact what you're putting away. So currently, what you're putting away does not support your vehicle replacement schedule. You are in a deficit for the next 10 years if you continue down the current path that you're in. If you make some adjustments that I'm suggesting, then you're probably in the deficit for about 1 year out of the 10. If you want to continue the current way, then you need to add another 50,000 to your reserves or start debenturing every vehicle you have. So I just put that out for council's consideration. When we look at the equipment, you're provided with a spreadsheet similar to this. this just lays out, when I first came here, I just did a full inventory of the fire services equipment. And laid it out in a spreadsheet on a replacement schedule. And you can see that in 2030, you are hitting a tsunami when you replace your SCBA. And you're going to be short about $800,000 on projected costs, okay? So that's a huge impact, right? So like I'm just providing this for you for information, because this is something the council will have to deal with moving forward. There are some ways you can kind of offset the impact, that you can delay purchase of some of it, like for a year or two, like you spread it over a 3 or 4 year purchase. You can reduce the number that you have, because you currently have, I believe, if I'm right, Councillor Gillis, is like 13 in each station. No, 14 in each station. 14. Right, 14 SCBA in each station. And then 100 cylinders. So in the SCBA is about $9,000 at the moment. Right, plus a cylinder is about $3,500. So that's how it's impacted. Also in the capital projection, airbag replacement this year, or next year, sorry, we did get a grant for that from Firehouse Subs, right, to cover the full cost of that. So that was a savings we recognized. Also, as proposed, is a SCBA washer, a decon unit. So under the OFL or the Ministry of Labor's cancer prevention checklist, which is recommended to fire services, doing assessments on buildings, where they're keeping the fire gear, cleaning processes, cleaning rooms, clean rooms, and so on. One of the things we can effectively clean at the moment is SCBA. So as part of the provincial grant for fire services for cancer prevention. So just listening to some presentations last week at the Chiefs Conference, the Ministry of Labor spends about $400 million a year on cancer, firefighter cancers. So so why did the grant come out? Was to address that early on and for cancer prevention. So I'm suggesting that I did put in for the grant, right, for that, for an SCBA decon unit. They're $54,000. The grant hasn't been finalized yet. So what we did here last week was that there's every fire department in Ontario, but 3 applied for the grant. There was $30 million there. The initial communication was anywhere between $8,000 and $10,000 per station. So we would be open to $24,000 to $30,000. I would think we're probably more around the 24, because if everybody applied, depending on what they applied for, chances are that they're just going to say this is how much you're going to get per station. So council would be responsible then for about $20,000 or about half of that cost. That is an important piece of equipment that you need to consider purchasing, right, to move forward. So just for an example, our neighbors purchased one 2 years ago through a grant as well. And they cleaned their SCBA 3 times in order to get it clean the first time, because it had never been cleaned ever in over 10 years. So it's just the contamination and the potential fire contaminants getting into the firefighters' bodies. And then, yeah, just the other stuff, the portable pumps, all 3 stations, they're old. We had one at station 3 this year breakdown. We couldn't get parts for it. So we took the second one from station 1 and moved it up to station 3. So instead of having 4, we're just recommending you to buy the 3, right? So each station has 1. And from the building perspective, painting the training room at Mount Elgin, they renovated it a few years back. They just put board on the wall and it wasn't coated. So just like the paint, I tried to fit it in our painting budget last year. It didn't work. So we're just proposing that this year. The epoxy floor at station 3 is starting to peel in the meeting rooms. I'm told by somebody who does epoxying that it's due to the wheels on the chairs moving around, and it's lifting the base or the clear coat on it. Currently, we put in some chair pads, I guess, that the chairs can roll around on. If you want, you can wait a little longer. It's going to get worse, or you can take it out of the reserves and get it fixed right away, and then continue to use the pads, and I'm told it'll fix the problem. Mount Algon is looking for an extension to the concrete apron out front. You know, to help them with, doing outside training, you know, put an Auto X, put it on a hard surface. When they wash the vehicles, they're not tracking the mud back in right away and so on. So that runs about $20,000 to put 20 feet out in front of the current pattern they have now. And that was also one of the reserves. And communications tower, so we need to do some upgrades next year, which is projected over the long-term plan for about $18,000 to $20,000. That comes out of the reserves. And then the water cistern, which council was aware of previously. So that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Go ahead, Marilyn.
Paul, could you just review the fire manager?
Yeah, so when I first came here, about 2 meetings in, I brought the council some reports and the comments as well. Every time you get a new chief, every new chief has a different idea and they want to go in a different direction. And so and it just from I've been here a year now. It's actually probably in a couple of weeks, right? So I've been here a year, believe it or not, started out as 3 months. So so here's what I see, and I'll just be straight with council. You have a lot of equipment, right? Which you can see. There's really not a whole lot of direction to assist council to say, okay, where does the fire department need to go? You're expanding or the residential wise, you're getting bigger industrial buildings. And so what do you want to continue to provide? So we did our community risk assessment and there were some things identified in there like water rescue, ice rescue, rope rescue, high angle rescue, confined space. Really, someone needs to be able to assess the risks in the township and then come back with to council and say, okay, here's your risks, here's your likelihood of something happening, and then decide and provide a recommendation. You either need to go down water rescue route, or you can just stay at the awareness level and just provide that level of service. Because if you go down the operations level past awareness, right, now you're looking at equipment and training. That's a huge dollar impact. And so when you start looking at the different services, the technical rescue services that potentially you could have, how are you going to deliver them? So one is do the in-house and provide the training and purchase the equipment in-house, or talk to your neighbors and can they provide the service for us? And if so, if they're willing, at what cost? Mutual aid, we talk mutual aid. It's not our neighbors say they'll come. And they have so far, but it's not really the legal component that you want to see when you're providing those services. Automatic aid, then we know what that's about, because then you start to say, well, they show up, we call them, and we've had 2 incidents this year, the river on the Thames River in Ingersoll, or in Beachville, we got called to. If people would have been in the water, we were at the awareness level, so we called in Ingersoll to help. And they could easily turn around and say, okay, you owe us X number of dollars because we showed up. And really, if we're calling them for it's not mutual aid, it's a service they're assisting us with. Mutual aid is we run out of tankers, they bring more tankers. We have to be able to have the service in order to ask for mutual aid. That's the legal term of mutual aid. Automatic aid is you provide a service, we need it, we call you when we need it, and we pay you for it. They have to be willing to do that. So that's just just kind of in a nutshell. I would recommend going down the fire master plan, and that'll project your services, that'll project equipment, and so on, and what's the demographics of the township and all that kind of stuff. So yes, it's a little bit of a bill, but it'll give you like a 10 to 15 or 20-year plan.
Thank you, Paul. Questions now from council? Councilor Brookman, go ahead.
I know it's not part of your request, but we did discuss the problem that Brownsville was talking about with not being able to get there in time to get their equipment and on the apparatus. And then they have to, if they want to go to the fire and the Brownsville short guys, they have to grab their gear and put it in their personal vehicle. Is that what did you do? I know you were going to discuss it with the chiefs, and I don't know where.
Yeah. So I did talk to the district chief Kramer, right, and said, okay, for his consideration, that was right the week after. So that he expressed a couple of concerns, one is, okay, if we let them take it in their vehicles, take it home, then people go straight to the scene and then might not pick up the truck. Right, that was one of the concerns.
Possibly.
Yeah, possibility of that. And then, I guess they used to do that at one time, right? And so he was going to, consider it and talk to his officers and get back to me. I haven't heard anything back yet. So,
Because that was one thing that happened when they decided they didn't need replace the rescue. Yeah, we had there,
yeah,
and that was where all the equipment was carried
right.
at that time, so it was, you knew if the trucks were rolling, you didn't have to go to them. So I was just kind of wondering if there was a compromise.
Yeah, so, I'm sure I'll be talking to him again in the next few weeks about it. If they did decide to and they needed some gear bags, they're relatively like $100 or $125, so that can come out of the new equipment side on the operating side. Not a huge impact to the budget.
Okay, any other questions? Councilor Gillis.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to Chief about the portable pumps, because they do have a significant cost. Do you know the ages of the pumps? And then what is the, I don't know, service program or maintenance program that would be involved in that?
So, if you give me a second, I'll see if I can pull up my master sheet here for the maintenance is done on an annual basis by the roads mechanic. He services them once a year. It's not huge dollars. I think I've got almost the projected years. I just have to find it here. Full pumps, looks like they're all pushing 20 years. Oh, sorry. Your purchase was in 2000. So they're about 24 years old. And we did have one, station 3 that broke, we couldn't get parts for it.
Any other question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know whether we want to debate into the apparatus conversation or equipment, or what, how do you want to go about it, or anything's up?
We're asking questions of the fire chief, so go ahead and ask it.
Yeah, I just kind of, so the other question, when we talk about the chief's vehicle and utility vehicle, I think they're both, what, 2017, what's the kilometers on them, what's the wear and tear?
Go ahead, Adam.
The 2017 Ford pickup had about 140 on it when I went to fire services. And it's getting very low mileage as it is right now, so.
I think the car's about the same, 150 or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 140, 150 is the car is the same.
I believe your plan is to get rid of two and purchase one.
Yeah.
Along the same line, do we see any major repairs? Like 2017 doesn't sound all that old to me.
No.
Especially for 150, I mean, it's only done 20,000 next year. It's gotta be good for 3 or 4 years, but
Yeah, the majority of the kilometers would have been rolled in on when I was on the public works side. Now the truck is on the fire services, getting very little kilometers, but now the utility vehicle that the chief drives gets a few more, probably 20,000.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
good. That was my thought. Do you see major repairs coming to either one of them? Like, are we replacing a transmission or a motor?
No, not that I see, and even just the type of those vehicles, I haven't heard of anything that those vehicles are having issues at a certain kilometer or anything like that, so I don't see anything major coming down the road, but it doesn't say that we won't be sitting here 2 months talking to the transmissions or something, so, right?
Good. Any other questions? So I've got one thought on the fire master plan. And I actually am supportive of the idea of long range thinking and knowing that things happen partly down the road. You'd reckon it gets changed somehow, but I'm just wondering, are you it says $40,000. Is this a consultant coming in to do a master plan?
Yes. I would recommend a third-party consultant. I don't think any fire chief has the ability or the expertise to do it. And also take the bias out of it.
Okay. Any other questions on, anything else you wanted to bring forward on the fire? Go ahead, Councilor, sorry.
Thank you. For you to Chief Reneville. Part of your vehicle rationalization was to downsize the rescue van in Station 2 to a much smaller unit. I know from my days on the department, one of the benefits of having a larger unit was having a spot to get in and out of the cold when you're fighting cold weather fires. And just wonder if you could speak a little bit like, where are your guys going to find a spot to warm up, thaw out on those -10-degree nights when you're fighting barn fires?
So a couple things. We'll start with the size. Currently, the one that's in Mount Elgin is really carrying minimal equipment. And most of it they put on their what they call the pumper rescue, the new pumper they got in 2021, I believe. And that vehicle has a passenger compartment on it. So there's the driver's compartment with a passenger, and then there's, I guess I call the passenger pump compartment that will seat 3 or 4 firefighters. And so when I was at the barn fire last December, or the silo fire, I was cool, and firefighters would go in there to get warmed up. So that's an option. If you get a larger fire or longer fire, you still have the rescue in Beachville. I would think you would always have the rescue in Beachville because they travel the 401 extensively. But that you could always call that unit in for rehab.
Any other questions? Councilor,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the fire chief, NFPA rules, remind me if I'm correct, is only the age of the frontline pumper. Is it correct? Am I correct on that?
Yes,
That's the only truck that's restricted by age,
yes,
20 years.
yes. And that's NFPA is also fire underwriters. So your insurance grading is affected.
Councilor,
To that end, would our tankers not be more of a risk in developing age with the weight that they carry and the fact that they travel more miles?
In my opinion, yes. If you look at our road guy who's more in the big trucks and from a mechanical background, yes, as they get older and older. So here's an example we ran into recently this year. So the pumper in Beachville is 23 years old, some 24 years old. And the body brackets broke on it and the body shifted. So we had to spend 5,000 or 6,000 to fix that. And we had to spend another, I can't remember, it was another major repair we had to do, something with the pump or whatever, but it was 2,000 or 3,000. But most of that is due to age. Wear and tear.
anything else? Thanks, Paul. I think we're down to revenue. And his report, you want to go back to his report then? No. Get back to- So. Recommendation there. You received the information and directed to include the proposed fire service vehicle replacement schedule in the 2025 capital budget and long-term fire vehicle replacement schedule. So are you suggesting putting this into the budget for actual implementation, or just putting it there for discussion?
Well, I think there's, in my view, there's a couple of things. So you need to decide what do you want to do with the chief's car and the pickup, because they're coming due. And then if you want to stay the course, then you can defer your decision to purchase tankers or what types of tankers or whatever. I just think if council decides, okay, this is the road we want to go down. We agree that this is the vehicles we want to replace. Then your next chief that's coming in, right? And I know they will get pushed to go with tandem axle tankers, right? There'll be a push from at least one district chief, right? And and hopefully the new chief doesn't get swayed, but then council knows the situation, say, no, this is what we decided to do. This is where we're going. And council can always change it, if you approve the report as I wrote it. Council always has the option to change it with the vote, I guess, down the road, 2 or 3 years from now. If you decide that you want to go bigger tankers, then council can bring that back forth in front of council for review and change that. But my suggestion is, here's your plan for the next 4 years, about 4 or 5 years for vehicle replacement in the fire department, and then adopt that.
Okay. So, in here, it has replacement of, the fire chief and utility two. A schedule. And yes, the recommendation, we only have one vehicle. And my suggestion would be that 2017 is not worn out and probably can stay around a couple more years. And I looked at the utility vehicle or the fire chief vehicle this morning, and it's doesn't have any holes rusted through, so it probably is still functional. Councilor,
We run into this at the LPRCA too. There's a vehicle replacement schedule, and so they try to stick to that schedule. And I asked the same kind of question at our budget meeting a couple of weeks ago. You know, how old are these things and what kind of wear is going into them? My thought here on those two vehicles in particular was that we would refurbish utility two and let the fire chief's vehicle go almost immediately.
possibility, yeah. Refurbish
As in put the cap on the back if it doesn't have one already and get a bit of lighting on it, whatever is necessary for safety reasons, and bring that into the chief's vehicle.
It has a cap on it already,
yeah, that's what I thought.
and lighting as well.
Okay, so in your thing, you would just get rid of vehicle one, the utility vehicle. Okay. Councilor Gillis.
So yeah, I'm on the fence, the utility and the fire chief vehicle, I could be persuaded either way. I want it noted about, tanker. Was it tanker two? Tanker two, about ordering, I think I brought this up in the past, ordering in advance to get an actual delivery date that's reasonable. I think we do have to consider that and make that maybe a priority, because everything seems to jump in cost. The longer you wait, the higher the cost is going to be and the higher delivery time. I think we've run in this, and Chief helped me out with this. When the pumper and beach was ordered, what's the projected delivery date now?
It was 18 to 20 months after we ordered it. So I haven't got an update on delivery. I know we've been dealing with the drawings and everything. So when did we order it? In July, June or July we ordered, or May? I guess it's probably May, February, or March, or April or May. I can't remember when we ordered it, I'm sorry. But yeah, so you're looking 2026 before we get it. Probably early to mid 2026.
So my thoughts are we should account for a way to order a truck. So we know that, like, that is the big sum of money, and I believe through accounting procedures and whatnot, we obviously have the money to be able to order it. I think that was how it was worded in the past, but we don't actually have to pay for it until it actually shows up. Am I correct?
Just ask the question.
Go
So
ahead.
we set up as a work in progress, right? As far as when it's ordered, basically it's on the books as being,
So payable or
yeah, so it's set up as a work in progress.
we're talking a difference here though between, how it shows up for an accountant and how it actually shows up for cash for us.
Right.
Which is two very different stories in my mind. So, I think that in my mind, there's a couple questions. First of all, I would agree with the chief. One vehicle is enough. And, I think if we could get a couple more years of a pickup truck, I'd be willing to, go along with Councilor Gittman's, let's make it last. I do think we should be ordering a new tanker. And I'm guessing, even if you take it off the shelf, we'll probably a year or more out.
Yeah, depending, where you get it from, it's anywhere from 9 to 12 months.
So
What I'm here is what I'm being told.
sometime in 2025, we're gonna be ordering, in my mind, this would be, and again, this is just my opinion. I would be ordering or encouraging us to order a new tanker for Fireball 2.
Yeah.
And knowing that we're not gonna see it till 2026. We may be paying for half of it in 2025 to pay for the chassis or whatever, but that will be later in 2025 and we'll finish paying for it in 2026. Not that that actually matters to anybody except for probably Brooke. Because she's the one that has to show the money. So, that's kind of where I would go with this, so. Councilor Buckner,
Just a question, when you do order, how much of a down payment is required?
So usually no down payment. Usually when the company gets the chassis in stock, then they ask you to pay for the chassis. And then you pay the remainder on when you delivery of the truck. So just that also want to add, Mr. Mayor, and to council, that if you go through canoe procurement and you buy a stock unit, then chances are you could, and you did that early in 2025, you could potentially see it in late 2025 if there's one coming off the line. So. Yeah. If you delayed it a little bit, so say, okay, you want to see it in 2026, then you would just hold off on your canoe procurement or your RFP until March or whatever, so that you know that talk to the dealer and they'll give you a projected timeline, 9 to 12 months, and then you can kind of determine what date you want to order it. So you got it in 2026.
so I'm less concerned about the actual day of arrival other than for accounting or for money. That I am about getting it to arrive the day before the other one collapses on the side of the road. And like again, you don't want to be in a position where, oops, we should have ordered a month ago. On the other hand, I don't like ordering a year in advance either.
No.
So I think that might be Adam to tell us, Adam, in your crystal ball, can you tell us what day is the tanker and Fireball 2 going to fall apart?
I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I don't know where you get the big bucks. No, okay, that's kind of where I'm looking at it. I do not want it to fall apart. On the other hand, I want to get the maximum amount of life I can. Any thoughts, Adam, on tanker 2, or do you want to look at it before you make any comments?
I could talk to Scott about it. It is international, it's got an international motor, that would be my concern about it, that the truck will fail before the apparatus will fail. It's just my initial thoughts on it. We have had terrible luck with international and the international motors, so that would be my only concern with it.
Okay. I think Councilor Buckner was next.
Yeah, through you to Paul, what is the difference between a stock or an RFP?
So a stock unit is the manufacturer designs it, it's already designed, they build 3 or 4 a year to their spec. And then you can purchase their spec and add a few things on it that you need. Versus an RFP, which you design and tell them what you're actually looking for. They could offer a stock unit depending on what you're looking for. So really, you can get the basic pumper, or you can get the more enhanced pumper. So fire tanker, sorry. So for example, our neighbors purchased a tanker and it had additional compartments on it for storage. So the district chiefs are telling me they don't need that. They just need what they've got. So the stock tanker is delivered basically off the line. If you RFP it and say you want something different, then they have to build it, design it, and then put it in their production line, where the stock units are already in the production line for 2025 or 2026.
Now, I was reading through your report and you were talking about front turrets on the pump, on the tankers.
Yes,
I know it is great at Brownsville, but would you be able to get that on the stock?
yes. So it would be in addition to the stock price, but it's, I think they're about $25,000 or $30,000 to add that on. So you could do that.
Councillor Gilch, or not?
I think, so my question's to Adam, charge of fleet, like, is there repairs that we're seeing on it? Like, obviously, I would think pump 3 is our oldest vehicle, it's obviously seeing probably most repairs, but are there other repairs that have come up on the fire fleet that stand out or no?
No, nothing. Other than nothing that's reoccurring that we're seeing, like say on some of the public works stuff, that's just ongoing, we're trying to dump the vehicle out, get rid of it. There's like the major repair this year with the apparatus body in Beachville, but no, there isn't anything that's kind of reoccurring or something we need to look out for. Some of the stuff is pre-emissions, so that is a good thing. With some of the newer stuff, they have all the diesel particulate filters, that all that kind of stuff. Well, there is ongoing maintenance to that stuff, so thankfully we don't have that with some of the aging fleet, but no, there is, to answer your question, no, I don't see anything major standing out.
So what tires?
Tires are all good for 2025. And again, tires are all just due to age, they're date coded, we take them off at a certain date. We don't want to have to run tires like that, sitting on there for 10 years. So they're not more out by any means, but they are getting, they carry a lot of pressure and a lot of weight, so we do.
Any other questions for Paul on this? So, heard a couple suggestions on probably I would call it amending the recommendation. Do you have a motion? Or do you want to think about it longer and we'll come back to it later? Councillor Yetla.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move that we approve the report with the amendments of converting utility 2 vehicle into the fire chief's vehicle effective January 1st, if possible. That we order the tanker for station number 2 in the year 2025 for delivery in 2026. And that the rest of the report be accepted as proposed.
As information then? Okay, get that.
So I have that the report will be received as information and that staff are directed to approve the proposed fire service vehicle replacement schedule in the 2025 capital budget and long-term fire vehicle replacement schedule as amended to convert utility vehicle number 2 to the fire chief's vehicle effective January 1st, 2025, and that tanker number 2 be ordered in 2025.
Okay, the intent, do you have a second? Second by Gillis. Any questions or comments? Councillor Yetla.
With the utility 2 vehicle, chief has proposed that similar vehicle be the chief's vehicle. Does the chief actually attend most fire events?
Yes.
Because in my experience during my time on the department, that was not the case.
So it all depends on your chief. When I was chief, I attended the major fires. Right? So the ditch fire, whatever, didn't necessarily attend because it was a small fire, but most of the major fires. If it's during the day, I would attend. Right, just to make sure you're going the right way and we got enough people on scene at night. It all depends on the type of call.
I realize times are changing and there's an emphasis on cancer prevention now, but during my 20 years on the department, my truck was the hose vehicle.
Yeah.
Most fires, right?
And
Especially in my later years on the department, we went months without ever seeing the chief. So If we get into that kind of situation again, is that vehicle gonna be available?
It can be, that'll be, that'll probably be some direction from the CAO to the chief. Is to say, you know, you need to, this is what the vehicle's being used for, or as you, or you, depending on. How to move forward with the chief and negotiations is, the vehicle can be parked at the fire hall at night. So I worked in 3 municipalities and I never took the fire truck home or the vehicle home. It was like parked at one of the fire stations. So it can be easily called. And I don't want to tie the CAO's hands. I'm just making those comments, so.
Thank you.
Thanks for consideration.
Any other questions? 2 quick ones, Councilor, is your vehicle still available for a hose vehicle? Okay, just find out. You said that it was in the past, and I was thinking that means it could be in the future. Second question, do we know what the anticipated cost would be to convert utility vehicle to the chief's vehicle? Like, are we?
Basically nothing.
It's ready to go.
It's ready to go.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there was something that I didn't know about that we were gonna say, oh, but we have to do that. It's got all the radio equipment, whatever you require for, okay, yeah, Mary Ellen?
So the existing fire chief vehicle is what's at, if we're gonna convert utility to, correct? Chief fire chiefs, okay. So we still have the fire chief original vehicle. Will we just hang on to that for use by the fire department for a period of time, or is there a plan? Look at the option of selling it. What is the,
But Councilor Young said he would get rid of it.
Unless there's another department that has need of a vehicle.
so we,
Councilor Gillis.
So into that comment, is there not an extra vehicle here? Because the drainage department's
Yeah.
got a truck, so there is a
Yes, I
vehicle,
know.
there is a spare vehicle. Sort of,
so
so I just,
So then we can liquidate it.
So do you want a motion on that, or do you want just direction to staff
Just
that's
direction.
effective January 1st?
because
The
we,
chief's vehicle.
yeah, so we would need to include in the 2025 budget, if we're looking at selling it in 2025. We'd have to plug it in as an actual revenue. And then usually we end up transferring that to reserve for future equipment purchases, so.
That sounds like a perfect problem.
So
It isn't.
fortunately, the very next report.
In there already? Oh.
But only, Paul and I just figured $10,000 for each of those 2 vehicles, so
Okay,
I put 20,000 to the vehicle reserve.
okay, thank you, sorry.
So we're cutting vehicle reserve, but we're saving 175,000. Oh, okay, good. Yes. Just trying to remember. All right, do you want a motion on that? And I'll get to you in a minute, Paul.
I
No.
direct,
Oh, this. I just, did you finishing the comment? Do you need a
No,
motion?
I just
Okay,
did.
Paul, go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering if we could amend that to say that we order stock or do canoe. Or is that the chief's jurisdiction?
Go ahead, Mary.
we need to amend our purchasing policy to allow us to order through Canoe, so direction to staff to utilize Canoe, I think would be sufficient, and then we'll, because we're gonna have a look at our purchasing policy in the future anyway.
I would make that amendment to the original motion.
So I think that since we're changing policy, I think that's a different direction.
Oh, okay.
Let's use that as a second motion. But staff will bring in a purchasing policy review ahead.
2025. But we
When is
could,
2025?
we're not sure yet, first quarter.
Okay, first quarter, okay. Councilor Gillis, you're not.
I would suggest that we leave that in the staff's hands with the new fire chief and staff to figure out how they want to purchase it and then come back to council and go from there.
Having heard, Chief Gronadell say, probably one off the shelf would work.
Yeah, you can canoe it or you can RFP it one off the shelf.
So we're still with the motion that is use vehicle 2 as the fire chief's vehicle. And we ordered sometime in 25 for the 26th delivery of tanker 2. Any further, that's the gist of the motion, anything further on this? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, Paul. that would bring us to, I believe, revenue, which says to me it's time for a 5-minute break. And then we'll come back, we just have revenue to do, right? Okay. Let's do a 5-minute break, and by that time we'll change.
I just wondered the difference between honoraria, training pay and meeting pay. Now, the training and meeting I get, but on the one line, they were looking at a 412% increase on page 65. But more to my point, the honoraria versus regular pay. So is that for those new positions?
So, all district chiefs, captains, acting captains, and the new positions, the training coordinators and the public fire life safety educator get an honorarium. So for their extra responsibility.
So that's over and above the
Yes,
regular rate of pay.
that's right.
So I think that follows through on most of the other calls. Same question. Fire revenue on page 68, just above the line that says Polo Beach Fire Hall operations. I have highlighted your fire revenue, Beachville Fire Hall number 3. What is that figure? Because it went from 73,000 in 2024 down to 40,000 in 2025 in the budget.
Right, so that would be the MTO revenue response. So on the 401,
Yeah.
all responses for, and we get reimbursed for those. So that's where I mentioned earlier that we took a conservative approach to that,
Okay.
right? So if council wants to take the risk, up that number. But if you don't get as many accidents and you get a few other bigger calls, as I pointed out earlier, then you're gonna be shortfall again on your wages.
Okay, and some of this stuff I highlighted a couple of weeks ago already, so it's on page 69, line 242, contracted service general fire. Is that for automatic aid incidents then?
Brooke, what do we have in it? Is that the,
So that's the joint training officer shared position, the joint prevention officer shared position.
Big difference this year would be the fire
The
master
fire,
joint position. So
yeah, the expense of the fire master plan is the parent they build the development charges served.
Okay, few lines down, line 281, communication maintenance agreement, general fire, and you show an 82% reduction in that. Could you explain that?
yeah, so last year, I believe, 10,000 was added late in the operating budget for work that needed to be done on the communication system. And so they took it out of operating instead of reserve for that. So that's not needed this year. So any work we're doing on the system this year is coming out of the reserve.
Okay, I highlighted that one in blue, not yellow, so.
Yeah.
Flip page over to page 70, line 320, general fire revenue, is that also then around the level of auto extrication or MVCs that you attend?
I'm not sure what that includes. Do we got that, Brooke? I'm thinking that's like burn permits.
Yeah, so we. I put in the 19. That's right.
So 19 from a grant from firefighter subs, 10,000 from fire. Okay.
Okay, and then this is probably more directed to Brooke, 2 lines down, line 380. Capital general fire, so is that the amount that we're putting in reserve for the next truck?
Oh, with 270,000?
Yeah, so
75 or 270?
270, 715.
Equipment.
Note that all of the capital equipment that we will be in our purchasing this year. So it's a collective, your list is on page 62 under equipment, and the bunker, your home, clubs,
Yeah.
all of that, that is the 270.
270.
Yeah.
775 has been reduced by 175. It's now 600.
Yes. Thank you. 200.
That's for the truck replacement.
Flip page 71, line 242, contracted out.
Your emergency management?
Yes.
Emergency management.
So we showed 2024 actuals of 1,100 and we're budgeting for 63,000.
So we were budgeting for a new generator, at the Brownsville Fire Home and Community Center. We are hoping that's coming from reserve right now, but we have applied for some funding to cover it.
Okay, I just saw a massive increase with a 0% at the end of that. That doesn't really add up.
They call it creative accounting.
Yeah.
Anything further?
Just the very last line there, total protection services, we show a 1,500% increase. And I'm wondering if that's in the system as well.
Which one?
The very last box on the very last page.
Oh,
So. Well, it's actually not a 50%, 15% maybe. But it's, as compared to actuals.
Well, that one really jumped out at me.
Yeah. It might be the total of all the other percentage changes.
That was it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anything else on, fire? Then let's look at revenue. Go ahead, please.
I just made a note on the page 140 summary. The town of Bainbridge reduced. There's a potential for them to decrease just due to the pending ARB decision. This is in relation to the 30, there is a pending ARB decision in the years 2022 to 2024. If it comes to that, the revenues are less than with it takes the difference from tax and location. Some things to
2022, 2021, 2024, I think it was 21 to 24.
Just some items, starting at 141, and anybody has any questions about it, just know that the OMPF has increased from 7.7 to 9.17. And we've also slightly increased the bank interest as well. Just comparing that.
So, under other revenue, town of Ingersoll, we budgeted 565, we got 473, and we're getting monthly payments with page 142.
Okay.
Right?
They're doing quarterly payments, right?
Quarterly. So we already received the fourth quarter.
No.
So that means that we're still expecting another 160,000. 155,000, 158,000, something like that. On top of the 473, puts us way over 600. 250 almost, 240. It's 30, but 65. Go ahead, Councilor.
Just while Brooke's looking that up, back up to the top, the home fund. What's the rationale behind the increases? Because I remember a year not that terribly long ago where we thought it was going to eventually vaporize. And just wondering, we've sent a number of letters in the last month or two in support of other municipalities requesting increased funding for policing, for mental health, for all the. Is this increase that the province is projecting, is that partly an answer to some of those things?
Go ahead, Mary Ellen.
We haven't been advised directly, where we have a feeling that could have been part of the issue was the increase in the billing. But that has not been confirmed.
I hope all of that.
Yeah.
I thought it was
This number.
And where does the province derive this funding from? Is this? This is gas money. Yeah, but this isn't gas money. This is.
No,
taxation money.
general revenue, just. Okay,
I don't have the agreement, but the first 3 quarters have been paid, 150,000 for the first 2 quarters and 170 for the last quarter.
so the next one at 170 still puts us up to 630. Okay, so, but that is pre, any kind of reduction.
That's right.
And would it be fair to guess that at least 20,000 a quarter would be reasonable?
So,
And 4 years at 20 or at 80,000, that's 320,000. I think we need to keep that in the back of our mind. We're gonna end up paying for, if they get a ruling in 25, after they've cleaned up to 20, now they're starting 21 to 24. If we get a ruling, we need to be prepared to pay the, I'm guessing, 80 grand a year. Out of the tax stabilization, so 300,000 of tax stabilization.
and that paid-
But we have anticipated that, and we're putting in 150. Okay. Anything further? Go ahead, Mary.
And there's also the potential of supplementary coming through on that instead of addition,
Which will trigger a supplemental,
which will
reduction.
trigger right after, yeah, it's a vicious circle, yes.
Yep,
But
okay.
we are anticipating that there'll be something related to that as well.
Okay. Any questions on that revenue? Is it?
Well, just on that one roll number, is there ever a point in time where the decisions, the rebate or whatever you want to call it, would exceed what we actually take in?
In any year? No.
Okay,
So they have to pay some taxes. They're just saying that I'm paying here, I should pay here. And instead of getting this much, or getting this much, you're only gonna get this much. And that's where the, trying to guess what that amount is. And, the first time, that's how we come up with the 150 number, because we want to make sure that we have more than enough. It appears that we do. And that's where I'm starting to guess at, okay, what's the second round number to be? And, let's say, I'm assuming, because they've changed the rates, that we're closer to being right. And that, I could be all wrong, 80 may not be near enough. But even at 150, we've still got 80 in a tax stabilization to cover it. But given what we received over the last, what they got, we had worried about 150, but we actually got 50 knocked off every year, right?
Mhm.
So over the 10 or 11 years, we paid 500 and some thousand. I'm guessing that because the building has expanded and because we now get 24%, we're going to, we better figure on, instead of 75, I'm figuring it would be at least 80 on an annual basis. So. Councillor Pickard.
Line 288 bank interest is significantly less than the last 2 years earned. Interest rates haven't gone down. Well, that one, have they? So, do we have less money on deposit?
May have a whole lot. When this budget's done, we may have a whole lot less. So.
And so anytime we, like for the write-off, for example, large write-off taxation, we're used to having that money, all of that money in the bank. When there's a payment that comes out of there, our interest moving forward will be lower because we've taken a substantial amount of money out of that. So I think our interest rates on the bank accounts are starting to drop. Would you agree with that, Brooke?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else on 142? 143? Three of them.
Top line or interdepartmental charges, that's basically just an in and out, it doesn't really affect the bottom line, does it?
Doesn't affect the levy.
Great.
So one department pays Brooke to do her accounting and it's all the same pot.
Yeah, because
Sorry,
yeah.
we'll be talking about the probably in the next meeting or two on how we fix interdepartmental charges in the future, but we don't need to talk about it today. Anything else on that page? Councilor Buckner.
Yeah, just a question on there, this tax reserve penalty, is that what people ask for late payment and stuff like that? Is that a possibility that's gonna go way up, but then you can't collect it because there's nobody, they just don't have the money?
Go ahead, Marielle.
Oh, so we apply the interest calculated every month on outstanding taxes, plug it in as a revenue, and then we track it through the receivables. So and then if we end up having to write something on, it comes to council for approval. So we haven't seen, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, we haven't seen a big difference, significant difference, unless you have a single or a couple single properties that are classified as a larger tax class that has a lot of outstanding arrears. And in that situation, you're going to see more. If those are paid off, then you could see a drop in the budget moving forward for that particular property and netting to a lower figure under budget. So it depends. If you have a couple that are big, it can make a difference. If you have a lot of small ones, there's usually a cycle that those run through. But we have very few that end up going to tax sale. Very few.
The other questions on this? Well, I think we're done with reserve. Changes.
Line by line, can ask any questions,
See any, move a couple of pages before any questions on the first page? The number in yellow at the bottom is your best guess as to the end of 2025. Okay, so if we look at tax stabilization, that includes the 548 that we just paid off. It does not include a potential, I'm guessing 300,000 more for 21 to 24.
you put 150.
I know, I'm guessing it's 320, but that still would leave us potentially at 1.2. Okay. Million under tax stabilization. All right.
Can I ask a question about tax stabilization?
Go ahead.
why do we leave so much money in there? I realize the write-off part. But we really need to have $1.5 million. So, is there any other uses for that money? Can we take it out for other projects?
Glad you asked, because I've got a couple suggestions.
Well, I got another suggestion too, but that's one of them.
Okay, so we'll put that one down as one suggestion.
Yeah.
Let's get through this and then we'll come back.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just want to say, I want to ask that question at some.
Okay, anything else?
Well, I was gonna,
Go ahead.
I have the same question about waste management surplus.
So let's stick to page 144 and we'll get to 146 in a minute because I've got some questions there as well. Under modernization, we've got chairs for council chambers. Whose chairs are those?
Those at the back.
Stabilization.
They worn out?
That was in
We've
24.
already done.
Those are new last year.
Purchase this year, 24.
Oh, that's what this is, okay. Yeah, right. Okay, new office chairs,
Yeah. Yes, we do require some new office chairs.
so, like, people are sitting around too much, is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay, this new office chairs, okay, out of the modernization, still leaves $129,000 in that, fund. Is there any, restrictions or requirements in the province on that one?
No, none.
Do it? I'm not suggesting it did disappear, but it could,
No question then.
yes.
So when Rob Walton was here making the presentation for RW2, and I don't know why I didn't think of it before, he did suggest that the funding for the consulting charges could be coming from the reserve for stormwater management, that new reserve. So if that was the case, it wouldn't be in modernization. Just as a.
Mhm.
And the generator as well. We're hoping to get some offset to that 63,000. The generator at Brownsville,
Okay,
from 25 to 63,000, we're hoping to pay before.
that's what goes.
When will, dare I ask, when will we know that? Like, probably not till early in the new year or what?
We submitted the grant in October, early October, it closed end of October, hopefully we know within the next 2 months, and it was to a maximum of $50,000.
If we don't get the grant, it's covered under this, Council Bookman.
I just want to check with Paul on that generator, because I know Brownsville is 3-phased. And so that's, handles that.
Yeah, so that generator will do both sides and it is 3-phase.
Yeah, I know.
Natural gas.
Yeah, we've had some doors that wouldn't open at one time, one would work and the other one wouldn't.
No, we worked with the electrician to get it spec properly.
Okay.
Our vehicle, the yellow number actually increased 175 to 500,000. Over a month. Okay. Not enough to buy a truck. Okay, fire equipment reserve. Just cover everything that was in the report.
Everything coming from reserves, yes.
Okay,
Things such
so the
as,
portable pumps and beacon,
yes,
okay,
PPE is not, PPE has covered taxation.
fire building. Training. Communications. Anywhere we want, roads, vehicles and equipment. Then roads paving. At the end of the year, we, 649. And this,
Probably will be little addition to that at the end of this year.
okay,
We're on pretty close to our budget this year for capital. Not like last year.
then can you just help me understand why do we have $78,440 in the, road capital under waste management, shouldn't it be in the paving? Or other road construction?
That's muted. I should have moved it.
Okay,
When I-
so we're gonna move that 78,440 over to with can't go into road building, road bridges, or which, where should it be?
I'm just gonna move it to
The paving, so we're gonna 78,440. And that is down to 675, or 575, sorry, 573. Good. Anything else on 145? Now we're on 146. Economic development, Mary Ellen, you're recommending we stick with the 21,000 a year for,
Yeah.
the road realignment and, with them, yeah. Okay. Councilor Picker, you wanted to know, before we get to waste management, you look at waste management, there's a 24 levy and a 25 levy of 788.44. And if you go immediately above it, there's waste management equipment, which is a new truck. That is at 262, and a new truck is
Slightly over 400.
it'll be over 400. So I'm gonna suggest that instead of leaving it in waste management reserve, we actually move it to where it's needed, which would be in waste management equipment. And since we haven't had a report from Public Works, we don't know whether we're in the waste management business in 26. We know we're in the waste management business in 25.
Council, there'll be a report coming forward to council on 26.
Okay, next meeting.
Yeah, hopefully we can have it for you for the next meeting.
Okay, so, and your report, you're in favor of,
Be in
or,
favor of it, yes.
so we're probably gonna need the truck. And that's why I'm suggesting we move this $156,000 out of waste management reserve, which will bring it down to 702, I think. This 156, 157, move it one line, one box up. From simply to be prepared for the new garbage truck. Councilor, yeah.
Where are you coming up with the 156?
7844, 444, and 78,444 from 24 annual levy for waste management and 25 annual levy. We haven't moved it yet, my understanding. And we're going to move another one in 25, that 150,000, 156,000 would put us in pretty good shape to be able to buy a truck in 20, to order a truck in 25 because are we gonna need it in 26 or 27?
We replace them every 5 years, so it'll be due in 2026.
Okay, and that would put us in a good position, so that's why I'm asking if council would be willing to do that. And then in 2025, once we know whether we're gonna stay in the garbage business, which is a council decision, you would be in position to have Adam go ahead and order the new truck that he needs. And we don't actually know what this specifications of the new truck are until after we know whether we're in business.
Right.
And we don't know whether we're in the business or not until after county council decides.
I believe that's been pushed to December 11th. If I'm
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, they all held off, but the two scenarios that they have provided you with, you haven't indicated that you were running away from either one of them?
No.
No. Okay,
Our truck needed for going close anyway.
okay. So, Counselor Gill, sorry.
Yeah, I have no problem. I think there should be adequate money in that reserve for a truck if we would need it. Obviously, if we don't, then obviously we can take it out at a later time, but I think we should be prepared to have it there. So that's what that reserve's for. So I have no problem with moving that funds into that reserve.
Okay. Well, is there any disagreement with moving
How much are you moving? 150?
156 from
150?
waste management surplus to waste management equipment so that we, those 278, the annual allocation moves up to where it should be in, waste management basically from. And that puts us in position in end of 25, early 26 to be able to pay for a new truck. I'm close anyways, I have no idea where they're gonna be, but I'm guessing. We might be a little bit short, but then that would be in the 26 allocation. Okay. Don't worry, I can take care of the rest of it.
Okay, I just,
Anything under recreation? There's a lot of reserves there, and at some point, we're gonna have that discussion on who's in, who's out. Okay, I would suggest that let's get through the reserves and then we'll go back to those, cemetery reserve. And drainage vehicle reserve. Okay. Anything on that? 148, we're at continuity of reserves. For the okay. Oh, sorry, right, I'm sorry.
Just a question, maybe this one's good for Mary Ellen, the COVID funding, like, is there any more things that we can use that for, or like?
You're right.
Yeah.
We ended up, actually, another report from the board to council on the COVID funding. Because we did utilize some of it for some of our capital costs. In 2023, 2024, we did the branch 23.
23, so it's just going.
So I'll be bringing up forward on the COVID funding. Because my understanding is there's been a little bit of a relaxation on the
Usage?
usage. So potentially, yes. So, yeah.
So is that a fund we see ourselves wanting to have when we already have an amendment fund? Going forward, like, is this one that we probably not knowing what the true balance is now?
Mhm.
Is this one that we probably could afford to get rid of?
We could,
And is it a obligatory, it's not obligatory fund, it's
Well,
kind of a
yeah.
hybrid.
Yeah. So projects that we're planning on taking out of reserve, other reserves, we could potentially be utilizing some of the COVID funding for. But there'll be a report coming to council on that.
So I guess I'm just wondering, though, would staff's intention be to drain that fund eventually
Yes,
in 25? Or,
potentially, yes.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? So the only funds that we have with us that are obligatory that we can't play with are they the bottom half of page 149, federal gas tax, building department, parkland reserve, development charges, those are all ones that were collected for a specific purpose and must be used for that specific purpose.
Correct.
Everything above that is at the discretion of council. Add it, subtract it, do whatever you want. Okay. There's only $500,000 in obligatory reserves. Okay. So just for everybody's understanding then, so. I get 5 to 11 and we finished going through the budget unless anybody has any more questions on reserves. Councillor Gillis wanted to do closed session before noon because he has to leave sometime after lunch. So I'm wondering, do we want to go to closed session and then we come back to doing deliberations on the actual budget itself? Or do you want to start on the budget and then go to closed session before lunch? Because we know at 12 o'clock we have a meeting. I'm just thinking if we started now, if we did closed session now, I don't think it's going to take more than 5 or 10 minutes. Then we could just go back into it, and when the appointments show up at 12 and 12:10, then we can just go right into them. So does that seem reasonable? Okay, so can we have a motion on closed session? Moved by Tucker, seconded by Justin, for identifiable individual for